Hello everyone. In this short presentation, I will talk broadly about digital transformation and particularly about digital strategies that are appropriate for business corporations, business organizations. When we talk about digital transformation, we are talking about both digital and transformation. Let's try to understand what transformation is all about. To transform means to change, fundamentally change. So digital transformation means transformation in the digital sphere. The transformation that the digital technologies bring in could be in organizational processes, in the products and services that the organizations deliver, in the organization's relationship with external stakeholders, including customers and suppliers. Digital transformation is about leveraging the power of digital technologies for better business outcomes, for increased and improved value propositions. Digital technologies provide a set of toolkits for managers and business leaders to make the existing processes, existing systems better. These technologies also allow opportunities for entirely different value propositions and business models. Digital transformation is a fundamental change rather than an incremental change that happens with one employee or a few employees within a division of a organization. Smaller changes might contribute to a bigger set of changes that could become a strategic posture of the organization over time. But until then, we cannot call them as digital transformation of an organization. Literature talks about three things: digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation. Digitization is, say, for example, a single employee in a department started using Microsoft Teams or Google Meet for communication. Or someone may start using email instead of paper communication. But that is just one example. Or a newspaper like Washington Post deciding to scan its print issue and deliver it over internet. That's just an example of digitization. Digitalization means the next phase, basically intermediate phase between digital transformation and digitization. In the digitalization phase, there will be more takers for the early adopters idea. However, at that stage, the organization still does not have a comprehensive strategy for embedding the digital technologies or their benefits into the corporates or business strategies. In the digital transformation phase, the senior leadership, the top leadership understands the value of these technologies and how these technologies could harmonize or synergize with existing technologies and processes for better, superior competitive advantage. So, digital transformation doesn't happen overnight in many corporations, many businesses, especially if those businesses are digital non-natives. For a digital non-native organization to become a digital organization, there is a huge learning curve, and many of them resist it. Even when they show willingness, it is a very slow process, and many unfortunately do not succeed. COVID-19 shows us that digital transformation is no longer a mere option. Many organizations resisted, many traditional organizations resisted digital transformation for one reason or the other. It could be because of the difficulty to train employees. It could be because of their concern that digital transformation would mean low touch, low connection with customers, because of their fear that that is not their competitive advantage or there is no market at all. So whatever the reason, the current scenario, the current set of conditions that we are in, unfortunately due to COVID-19, you can see that almost every organization has absorbed certain elements of digital technologies and processes into their internal processes, internal functioning, as well as in their dealings with customers and suppliers, and even in relationship with other stakeholders such as governments and donors. A lot of the business organizations use these technologies to make the existing operations more efficient, to make them faster, rather than to expand the scope of the business or to bring in new value propositions. Blockbuster did use digital technologies. They may have used digital technologies just to increase their existing operations, maybe to make the ordering of a movie faster. But Netflix came with an entirely different business model. They expanded or changed the scope of the business. So that is what is called a radical innovation and a true business transformation. Using a technology to speed up the existing processes or making the existing service little more faster, that doesn't probably become a transformation. So there are two dimensions of business transformation. The number one dimension is using of digital technologies to increase the efficiency of existing, processes. The second dimension is more important, which is true to the spirit of the definition of digital transformation. That is, use the digital technologies to create scope expanding processes. Scope expanding processes means new ways of finding value for their customers, bringing value to your customers, to make new products, to make new services, and to introduce to new business models. All that said, digital transformation is not just about technologies. It is also about a transformation of human beings working inside an organization. And truly speaking, digital transformation cannot be achieved if the society at large does not show willingness to embrace these technologies and processes. We had a lot of technologies pre-COVID-19 that would have ushered an era of digital transformation, but that didn't happen because the consumers, society at large, was not really willing to do that on a massive scale. But suddenly the jolt and jerk created by COVID-19 means that there is an increased level of acceptance of these tools and technologies. And this is not a threat. This is an opportunity for businesses. Successful businesses that make use of business transformation for their advantage would be those who find opportunities in this situation rather than I am using these technologies because I have no other way. Ideally, I would not have used it. I have no other way. No, that's not the approach with which we should absorb. We should receive these technologies. I would like to read a definition of digital transformation from a book that I edited last year for Palgrave Macmillan. The book was titled Digital Transformation in Business and Societies. And in that book, we talked about the strategic implications of digital transformation. The definition that we used in the preface of the book was like this: digital transformation is a process in which disruptive digital technologies open up additional opportunities for dynamically capable organizations which are seeking to improve the ways they create value and these organizations strategically exploit such opportunities by altering their structures, processes, and cultures within the degrees of freedom accorded or afforded by these technologies. It's a long definition, but the sense is digital transformation should be by disruptive technologies, not incremental innovations. And digital transformation is a process rather than a destination or a output. And only dynamically capable organizations could leverage these technologies. What do you mean by dynamically capable organizations? Organizations have capabilities. A dynamically capable organization is one that could leverage basic capabilities for the generation of additional capabilities. Put together two capabilities and create a third capability, or put together a few basic capability to create new capabilities, to bend the existing capabilities, to flex the existing capabilities. Only such organizations can respond to environmental opportunities and environmental challenges. And these organizations, by means of absorbing these disruptive technologies, create value for customers. That value for customers will become the organization's profit. The value for customers minus the expenses for creating that value is the profit for the organization. So the objective of an organization is to increase that gap. And these organizations that absorb these technologies strategically exploit the benefit of these technologies by changing their practices, organizational practices. If an organization resists its practices, some of these technologies cannot merge well. Organizational structures might need change. Some employees might need to be redeployed, or they might also not be needed, unfortunately. But there is also an ethical angle, and organization needs to be able to, keep that in mind. So organizational culture is also a very important aspect in success of digital transformation. Some organizations, especially those who are digital natives, they are faster because they don't have the baggage of culture dragging them from absorbing new technologies. So digital transformation is a very complex process, and it is a strategic process. So that's why I try to link digital transformation with strategic management. It's not a operational decision. It's not a tactical decision. That said, it should also not be a decision related to vision or mission. You may have better technologies. That doesn't mean that you have to go somewhere else than where you originally wanted to go. Many organizations forget their mission and vision when they have these technologies because they see that, maybe these technologies will help us make more money. But making the money in that new way may not be in alignment with the vision or mission. So organizations need to be very careful in positioning this digital transformation at the strategic level, and then percolate down to tactics and operations. But do not change an organization's vision or mission just because the technologies allow it to do that. It doesn't mean that you cannot exceed the basic targets. For example, if the vision or mission of an organization puts certain parameters, you can always achieve and exceed it. What I've tried to say is that do not go in a different direction just because the technologies allow you to go. One of the benefits of digital transformation, actually the most important benefit of the digital transformation is that it converts every firm into a factory of intelligence, a factory of data information. And some of these technologies have inbuilt ways of deriving insights. Machine learning technologies are part of a lot of digital transformation efforts, and these machine learning techniques find insights in the billions of bytes of data, and organizations need not even ask the questions to the algorithm. The algorithm will find out the questions and hypothesize and come up with patterns. So that's a very clear advantage. Every organization can become a not just a data factory, but a factory of intelligence about the inner workings of the organization, employee morale, customer behavior, patterns in suppliers' behavior, overall changes and patterns in the business environment. Everything could be gathered by means of business intelligence driven by the data that the organization produces. Digital sensors and digital transceivers can be placed in almost every gadget, every machinery, every product, and you can convert all these things as IoTs, Internet of Things. Once you do that, you get very important insights into behavior of people, behavior of systems. And all this pulled together will make organizations a system of intelligence or system of intelligences. What are the drivers of digital transformation? It's not just because the technology is available there. Of course, the technology is available there, and a lot of businesses proactively think about opportunities to leverage these technologies. But that's not the mainstream. The mainstream is a reaction to competition because organizations find that given the cutthroat competition, there is no way they have to react. In the generic literature on strategy, you talk about cost leadership, differentiation, or focus as the basic strategies. And digital transformation could also be driven by the need to become a cost leader by reducing the cost of manufacturing and servicing, or to differentiate your offerings by mass customization. Digital transformation also allows an organization to focus upon particular specific niche market segments. So that is one of the biggest drivers of digital transformation. Then, of course, the environment is changing. Once upon a time, the regulators, governments wanted businesses to submit a lot of paperwork. Right now, there is an expectation that a lot of processes involving regulatory communications and processes should be, could be, are encouraged to be electronic. That reduces the time to get approvals. So regulatory pressures are one of the driving forces. The need for accountability. I'm particularly talking about, say, blockchain technologies. It allows you to independently authenticate contracts and build trust outside of traditional mechanisms like governments and courts. It helps you verify the authenticity of information. The other driver is changing consumer behavior, changing the technologies being used by your suppliers, changing the technologies used by other agencies that communicate and interact and relate with you in the value chain. If your suppliers are using an advanced electronic technology or digital technology for certain processes, your technology should interface and interact with them. Otherwise, you cannot have an effective relationship. So those pressures are also a big factor. changing consumer behavior is very evident. Consumers are becoming more and more digitally literate, and that leads to increased opportunities. And there is also an expectation that consumers should be provided an option, even if you are a brick and mortar enterprise. Consumers expect that they should get an option to relate with the firms in an electronic way. Opportunities to enter new markets is another big driver for digital transformation. Someone sitting in their basement can sell their products to anywhere in the world on a platform such as eBay or Alibaba if they do their business as a digital business, as a electronic business, e-business. So there is an advantage to find new markets, new customers by going digital, which is not possible if you have a small shop front, even if it is in a relatively big city. You cannot go beyond that, you cannot grow beyond that geographical area. A few organizations do digital processes just because they want to give a flavor, a taste of this to their employees. If there is no particular pressure, maybe this is a good idea. It will help develop an ecosystem of future-proof employees in case there is a need. And that actually helped several organizations during this COVID-19. Many universities did not have online classes before COVID-19. They never offered courses online. But some of their professors used these technologies to enhance, to complement their face-to-face classes even before COVID-19. And that was not really taken positively in many cases, but it did happen. But when the COVID-19 hit, all those experiences and experiments came to the benefit of these universities. So sometimes it is always good to have a plan B and C even when it might not be needed. And digital experimentation, create a small ecosystem of people and let them experiment with some of these emerging technologies. You never know when you will have to use it, or you may use it even when there is no clear opportunity, by creating a new market, a new way of delivering products and service to your customers. I told that the learning curve for existing incumbents, existing players in a marketplace who are not digital natives, that learning curve is very high. Some of them don't even try these digital technologies. They just close their shops. They cannot survive. Some do try. I give an example. Thomas Cook. Thomas Cook is one of the oldest travel agencies in the world. They had massive travel agent and tour operation business. When Expedia came as an exogenous innovator. They were not from the travel sector. It was an offshoot of Microsoft. It was a technology player from outside of the travel industry. Hence, it's called an exogenous attack. Thomas Cook was not prepared, but it still tried to survive. It started absorbing some of these technologies. It survived for a couple of decades. But finally, it just couldn't survive. Eventually, and it closed shops. Late 2019, late 2020, early 2020, they declared bankruptcy. So it's not easy for traditional organizations to do this. It's worth a try. What is more important is, if Thomas Cook had done it before Expedia came, because the technologies were available, I'm sure somebody would have presented these to their top management, that, hey, it's possible to have a online travel agent, an e-travel agent. If Expedia had listened to that, sorry, if Thomas Cook had listened to that, the future would have been potentially something different. So this is very important. Everything is clear when you look at hindsight 2020. When you talk about digital strategies, one question that often affects the C-suite, the senior administrators and senior top managers is, should an organization have a separate digital strategy, or should the digital strategy be merged, amalgamated with an organization's overall strategy? In many practical scenarios, there is a chief digital officer, not often with that name, but there will be somebody who is looking after the technologies in an organization. That person may not be as powerful as the CEO, maybe a vice president of technology. And that person develops a technology strategy, and then organization tries to align that technology strategy with the overall strategy. But over time, this creates some kind of friction, because you always need to consciously try to align the technology strategy with the organizational strategy. There will be culture clashes and organizational politicking, everything. In order to avoid that, several organizations decided that there need not be a separate technology strategy. There need not be separate digital strategy. Put them together. You don't need to align them, you just need to fuse them together. That has got certain clear advantages. But that also has certain disadvantages, because once that fusion happens, organizations sometimes become less responsive to anticipating new technological revolutions that are forthcoming, because the people in charge of technologies, they may not be technocrats, they may not be futurists, they may be general managers and general leaders who, even though they may have a clear vision overall, they may not be keeping abreast of changes in the technological realm. So there is an advantage of keeping technological strategies separate, and also an advantage of amalgamating it or fusing it with an organization's overall strategy. This is a complex question, and organizations need to choose according to what, a discussion and debate on what is better for them. I have been observing a lot of organizations where this fusion has happened. And this fusion means that the organization works in a more concerted manner, which is good. But the struggle, as I mentioned, is when this happens, the leaders really do not get to know, or they are not experts in anticipating possible futures that the technology might take. And technologies are changing very rapidly. And we probably need specialists to think about what are those implications of these technologies, how we could leverage these technologies for our organization's advantage. Think about simulation technologies, autonomous, vehicle technologies, the additive manufacturing technologies, smart clouds, smart clouds, not just storing data, but also with processing power. So then you may have heard the recent announcements, Starlink by Elon Musk, and also the brain-machine interface, again by his company. Starlink and the Neuralink. The Neuralink means that I'm sure you have seen the demonstration recently that the Neuralink company inserted some electrodes into the brains of pigs and tried to communicate directly with a machine, a computer. And these are generic innovations, but specific businesses may find applications of these technologies in their realms. And in order to think through these, you sometimes need people who can dedicate more time about those possibilities. So some of the issues like cybersecurity. When an organization goes full-fledged digital, cyber attacks might become more common and organization might be more prone to that. So you need to have specialists to deal with those things. So amalgamating everything, even though it sounds efficient and good culturally, it may not be best in terms of technology absorption or anticipation. Who make good leaders in the era of these kinds of radical business transformations driven by technologies? Who would become the best strategists and strategy implementers? A lot of studies say that convergent thinking is very important. Holistic thinking is very important. Since the time of mass production, industrial production, specialization became more and more fashionable and popular. And at one point in time, right now, we have micro, nano specializations. And these specializations created watertight compartments, and people in one specialization could not communicate with those in another specialization. But thanks to these digital communication technologies, there is more, significantly more of an interoperability. And these technologies help these micro nano specialists to communicate with micro nano specialists in other realms. And in that fusion, you get to develop new products, new services, new business models. A true leader is someone who can facilitate all these processes. And that true leader is someone who is a holistic thinker. A holistic thinker that can internetwork. I mean, technologies provide the infrastructure for that internetworking, but the human touch for that is critically important. So a strategic leader for business transformation should be someone who can facilitate this. Also, these leaders should be agile and adaptive. I strongly believed that agility would be the number one trait of a business transformation leader, a business transformation strategist until COVID-19. But the behavior of some of these so-called agile leaders during COVID-19 made me think maybe that is not sufficient. Agility is very important, but these also leaders should also show some level of maturity. Mere agility means that you respond quickly to environmental changes, to quickly to opportunities, quickly to constraints posed upon you, but your reactions would create tensions within the organizations, with customers and suppliers. Your sporadic moves create jerks and jolts. You should be mature, but you should be dynamically mature. A true transformational leader, especially when a crisis is hitting, should be a dynamically mature leader. And that kind of a leader can lead the business transformation even in difficult situations with least pain and hurt feelings for the stakeholders. These leaders should also be ethically prudent because digital transformation creates, honestly speaking, the gap between haves and have-nots are increasing. The digital have-nots, they are left out of development. They are left out of the benefits of it. It could be your employees whom you never trained in these technologies. It could be customers who are left out of the benefit of the value that you're creating because they don't have these technologies. They cannot access the benefits of your technologies. So you should find a way to take them along with you. And that's probably part of your social mission. And every transformative leader, every leader that leads digital transformation should be conscious enough about this dynamic rather than merely be happy about, hey, I am empowering my customers, I am giving them the opportunity to co-produce and become part of my journey of life and business. We should always be mindful about who is losing out in this journey that makes us feel proud of becoming leaders in our sphere of activities. Currently, many of you would know this, we are considered to be going through the fourth industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution was mechanization brought about by steam engine and those technologies. The focus was substituting human labor with the labor of those new kinds of energies, particularly steam energy. The second industrial revolution was brought about by the use of electricity for industrial production, and that heralded the era of mass production. So the focus was scale economies. You create the products in large scale. In the third industrial revolution was brought about by electronic technologies and the normal computational technologies. In this phase, the focus was on minimizing input costs. It facilitated global distribution networks and interconnectivity among those production centers and distribution centers. Currently, we are going through the fourth industrial revolution: smart technologies, intelligent machines, data-driven decision making, big data-driven decision making. The focus is on adding value, finding new kinds of value, and this value could be passed on to customers. So this phase of industrial revolution, the fourth one, gives more importance to machines, smart technologies. Humans are relegated from a lot of activities. Maybe these machines will work with humans, cobots, they collaborate with humans, or they might make humans irrelevant. But the collective wisdom of humankind, if that happens, the collective wisdom of the humankind should be prudent enough to anticipate it and stop it. Let us hope that the technologies would be good servants for human beings rather than our masters. We don't know what the nature of the fifth industrial revolution will be. We still do not know. Let's hope that these revolutions will increase human happiness and flourishment. This is not the beginning, this is not the end. We will continue our journey. So, talking about digital technologies in one sentence, if I need to say, these technologies are a great boon if we leverage them in the right manner. And these technologies should be approached strategically rather than using them for solving particular problems without giving any regard to how all these will tie together to form the big picture. Once you do that, once you do the exercise of putting all these pieces together to complete the big picture, you can say that you have a successful, a good business strategy. Thank you.